Hello and welcome to this video. In this video I will be going over the various movement skips in Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, as well as explaining my personal setups, as well as a few different slower or safer strategies for the ones where it is applicable. The basic idea of this is just that a lot of the skips in this game are not the easiest to tell how to do consistently just simply from looking at footage of it. And as far as I know, there's not really a resource like this yet, so I figured I would just go ahead and make it. All of this will just simply be based on my own personal knowledge and um, experience with the skips, so it might not be 100% complete, and there might be things in here that might not work for everyone, but I'll do my best to cover as much as I can. Um, there will be timestamps and chapters for the different skips in the description and on the video if you want to check those. I think that's about it for the intro, so let's go ahead and hop into the video. So for the non-vision version of Aethermine Jump, we're essentially going to want to jump off this ledge and land down there on the lower layer, either landing on that lamppost or the little railing that's next to it. I personally find the lamppost easier to land on, so that's why I'm going to be going over here. There's a lot of different ways you can line up the camera. I know that a former runner known as Dread used to like to go into first person. He found that made it more consistent. But for me myself, I personally like to set the camera perpendicular to the lamppost. So you can see right here, the lamp is going essentially vertically on the screen and then jumping off. You'll be coming at it running like this whenever you approach, and just aim for the lamppost. To kind of give a little more description of how I personally like to manage my momentum, I like to make sure I'm going far enough forward first, then like steadily tap and hold back to kill my momentum as I'm approaching, being in line with the lamp. And the reason why I personally like this perpendicular camera is it makes one less dimension to aim in. With something like this, you're essentially trying to aim in 2 dimensions at once. As I said before, you can also land on this little railing right here, though I personally find it a lot more difficult and a lot less consistent to land on. So this next version of Aethermine Jump is a lot easier, though it is a little bit slower. Essentially, instead of jumping off here and landing on that lamp down below, we're going to be running up ahead a little ways until we get to the next little divot in the ground here. I have to wait for the blade just simply because of my saving and reloading to record this. But essentially, you're just going to want to jump off this ledge here and land over here. It doesn't really matter what part of this you land on, but then you can just go ahead and save and load like normal. And you're good to go. This is a lot easier because you don't have to aim for the little ledge or the little railing or the lamp. Though, like I said, it is a good few seconds slower, though not too much. Additionally, since I am recording this, I figure I'd go ahead and say that the way that you want to time this jump here is when the camera changes floors in the top right up there. So whenever the walkway coming away is now vertical. You don't want to be too preemptive about this because even just a little bit early and you will just simply die. It is pretty close to whenever the map changes that you're able to jump and survive. But I figure go ahead and include that in here just simply because it might not be intuitively obvious how to time that when you're first learning the category. I already have a video on my channel covering the Vision version of Aethermine Skip, but there's a few things I want to add here as little notes that I didn't mention in that video. The first is that I recommend killing off these 2 grounded mech on here, as they can cause problems for you if you don't, by spotting your allies and killing them with auto attacks. The second is to be aware of what part of the ledge here you're jumping off of. I personally like to jump off around about here, but you just need to be careful about where you're jumping off because as you can see, the actual height of the ledge changes. So over here on this side it's a little bit lower, over there it's a little bit higher, and that can affect the timing that you want to jump off and basically affect the timing that you'll hit the ground based on that. So I'm just going to go ahead and slot that video in right here. I'll cut away to it and you can watch that now if you want to. I'll also have a link to the original video in the description if you want to see it on its own for whatever reason. So for builds, on Shulk we pretty much just run whatever we usually have on him for the speedrun. He's going to be the character that we jump down with, so his level and stuff don't really matter because we're not going to want him to be targeted by the enemies. For Ryan, I just have the Agniratha 2. I believe that with the recent stuff that's been talked about, we might be running a different Machina weapon on him, but ultimately it shouldn't really make that much of a difference. And for Charlotte, I just have the Alakion gloves. the weapon doesn't have any ether defense, and I've switched to a rifle instead of the banquet biter, which was the standard for the route before, just simply because it helps her attack the enemies we're going to be using for this and draw the aggro a little bit better. Outside of that, the Alcaron gloves are to give her just a little bit of ether defense so that she is put into vision range a little bit better for more, and it lines up a little bit better with what we want. I'll go ahead and show my stats here just so that you can kind of match up, make sure everything lines up with what I have here. And I'm actually going to go ahead and cut away because this trick is still a little bit inconsistent for me, and I don't want to have to keep on failing and re-recording this opening part. So I will see you guys in a minute. So for the setup, we're going to be using these flying enemies here. Go ahead and aggro them on your AI party members. Ideally, you want them to aggro onto Charlotte, but if they aggro onto Ryan, it can also be fine. If you stay far enough away from them, they will always use Energy Shot. And basically what we want is like this, where we get a vision. So whenever the timer on the vision gets close to the third digit in the damage number, we're going to want to go ahead and jump off and focus our allies back on the enemy. And if all goes right, this should just work. And this will let us skip all the way down to the bottom of Ethermine and pretty much save multiple minutes off the speedrun. And I messed it up. Let's see how off I was. Oh no, I did not mess it up actually. So the trick is a lot more lenient than we originally thought. I must have landed like right at the very end of it, but as there you can kind of see what we are going for. Just with the timing of that, the second vision will pretty much trigger right as we land on the ground. And from there, we pretty much just, if you just walk down here to where the elevator gets off, it will automatically trigger the cutscene to start the fight with Zord. Even though it's a bit more minor, I wanted to briefly talk about Lakeside Jump. Essentially, the goal here is to just jump off and land in the water down there. And the best way I found to do this is on this little lip here that sticks out, this little bit right here. So you're kind of approach like this, just go ahead and walk off in this direction, and you're essentially going to want to land in the shallow water. And the reason for this is that it lets you cancel the landing animation. Not much more to it than that, I just kind of wanted to include that just simply because getting it quite right might not be, it can be a little bit difficult, so it's something I figured I might as well just put in here since I'm running through the game anyways. So the next skip to talk about is Hollow Bone Skip. To be completely frank, there's not a great setup for this. You mostly just have to eyeball it. Essentially the way I like to do it is I like to come at it at an angle that's pretty straight on to this ledge and a little bit to the left. I'll run between these two and jump just before these two little lips here, and I'll jump just before I hit this edge. After the jump, you want to hook to the right in order to get a to kind of hook around the corner, because I find that jumping straight at the corner is not very consistent. You typically just kind of clip it and fall. Additionally, you want to make sure you time your jump right so that you don't get fast fall. This is something that takes a lot of practice, and you just kind of gotta get a feel for it. Also, if you fail it, a lot of times you can just land like that and try again, and there you go. And for the second part of this, I'll go ahead and show the drop down as well. Essentially where you want to jump off of is right about here in this little divot, and you want to try and land. You can see down there, I don't know how well it's going to come across in the video, but there's where the dark part is and the light part is. You can barely see a little bit in between them, and that's kind of what we're aiming for. And whenever you land in the water, you want to hold towards the edge. I didn't get the landing cancel there, but you kind of want to try and land right about here in the water, where you're just barely swimming. And if you hold towards land, you'll get the landing animation cancel. I wanted to show one more iteration of Hollow Bone Skip with me running up to it. Usually I try and angle the camera right about now, time the jump, and you just kind of get up there like that. Like I said, there's not a great setup for doing it with like a slow lineup. So if you're not confident with this trick, I recommend not doing it in runs and just simply going through Hollow Bone normally. I think this trick only saves about 20 seconds, so it's not worth going for if you're not comfortable with it, or if you're not going for a highly optimized time. So this next skip is one that is commonly referred to as Cylinder Skip. I'll be starting off with my personal setup. Actually, I'll do some of the easier ones first. I'll go through some of the easier setups, and then we can go through the one that I do, which is a lot faster, but a bit more difficult to get used to. So this is where you would usually jump off, but for the first of the easier setups, if you actually just simply go up one extra layer, and you just simply jump from here, you'll pretty much always make it, and you'll always survive. So if you just want a really easy way to do it, that's one way to do it. For the second way is a bit of a slow lineup. This is what I used whenever I personally started running, but it's a bit slow, so it's pretty not something you really want to do forever if you're really going for optimized time. But essentially, just line up against this so that your shoulder's on the left edge. Turn the camera so that the ladder is down the middle. Then just go for it. And that will line you up so that you'll land right here nice and easy. So for the last one is my personal setup, is essentially just, it's going to be essentially going up to that same spot as last time, and then whenever we get there against the wall, to simply hold the camera so it changes angles, lock a angle on the analog stick, and then turn the camera so I can aim. So you can see that's much faster, but as you can imagine, it's probably quite a bit more difficult to aim. I'll go through that once more a little bit slower just to kind of help give a better idea for what I do. So keep the I personally find it helpful to keep the camera perpendicular to the wall on the way up. I use right about here as my point to turn around, and I hold essentially this direction on the analog stick, so the direction I'm currently running. And right there I didn't make it over the ledge, but there we go. And there we go. So that's 3 setups that you can use for this. There are more setups, but I'm not familiar with the one that Dread uses, for example, so I don't really want to cover that here. But let's go ahead and move on to the next skip. Alright, so here I'm going to just be kind of going through the upper Mechonis field movement. The first thing is this little jump here. If you angle it right and jump off that ledge at the right time, you can actually grab this ladder. If you don't grab the ladder, you'll simply just take some fall damage, and it's not really that big of a deal. There's actually 2 ways to do this next drop. I'm going to be showing the faster way first, which is essentially aiming for that little cylinder down there. Important to note is to not fall off this ledge over here, the side that I currently have shoulder facing. Do not fall off that side, as that will kill you. You'll only survive if you fall off this end over here. Essentially, you just want to aim for the cylinder. It's actually a pretty decently sized target, so it's pretty easy to land on. And then you can just be on your way. Since I'm having to head back through here again, I figured I would go ahead and show this as well. Is that another way to do this? You can actually just jump on the railing, and it makes it much easier to grab the ladder there. You do have to be a bit careful when you're hopping on the railing not to fall all the way down, so it's a bit of a risk reward for what you want to do, and I do believe that falling off the railing is a little bit slower than just simply jumping the ladder. The other way that you can do this fall here is essentially aiming for this big ring right here in front of me. This can be a bit easier to aim for based on how you like to aim it, and you simply just take 2 fall damages like that. And make sure you grab the landmark still. But some people find that a little bit easier to aim for, just simply because you don't have to worry about the front backwards, you don't have to worry about the left right. So I figured I would go ahead and include that here just as well. So this last little bit of movement is pretty easy as long as you know what to do. Essentially just run parallel to this little lip, climb up onto it, and then simply walk off and aim for this little ledge here. As long as you actually land on the railing, it's pretty easy to just simply land within this area behind the railing. It doesn't really matter how far up or down the railing you are, as long as you're pretty close to the lower end of it. It's not too specific. And overall, this one's not too hard as long as you don't let the nerves get to you and you're able to actually get on the railing itself. Lastly, I'm going to go through the Agniratha Platforming. Essentially, at first you just want to aim to the right side of this little piece of geometry here. And you can just simply drop down to this bridge. So normally here you go up and activate the next pillar, but just simply for the sake of showing off this quickly and with a few cuts. Essentially for here, you just want to run into this corner. You won't go over the edge, and it's really easy. You just simply jump, and even though it looks a bit scary, you will always make it as long as you have enough quick step. At least I think the quick step is required. With the set for New Game Plus, you'll always make that, and I believe as well in New Game, so there's not really anything to worry about there. That should be about it for this video, though. It'll be really awkward if I find something else I need to edit in and slot it in after this. But I do hope that you found this helpful and that this was able to clear up any questions that anyone might have about any of these skips. If you have any questions or want any further clarification, please feel free to ask me in the comments. I would be more than happy to clarify wherever possible. With all that out of the way, though, that's going to be it for this video, and I will see you in the next one. See ya.